Please join me in welcoming Jeffrey Purtee.
My very favorite contest of my reign as Chief Judge so far was a club contest where we had 6 speech evaluators, 6 judges, well qualified all, and every single judge picked a different winner of that contest. I love that contest. We're going to discuss 3 topics that I hope you will find illuminating in regards to my chief judging. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of the structure of the way we've been conducting this chief judging role. Then I'm going to share some tips for judges, as well as some tips for those of you that are still competing based upon that contest, as well as a few others. You have a handout before you that looks something like this. And that is the form originally designed by Mike Sullins and Art Grossman. I was fortunate to inherit this form. It is essentially the March Madness bracket modified to do a contest. And as you can see, we have been tracking the various winners as they have won every club contest, and it's just a wonderful single-page device for all of the area governors, the division governor, and frankly anybody who's interested to know exactly where we stand at any particular time while we go through the contest. Now, on the opposite side, you'll see a detail sheet for a single month. Again, I made some changes of my own just because I'm a colorful guy and I like to color code everything. But as you can see, you can tell at a glance whether something is a morning contest, afternoon, or evening. It becomes immediately apparent if you have conflicting conflicts. Now I want to highlight one thing. You'll see some names scratched out there. That doesn't mean I don't like those people. That was my own way of keeping track of judges that I had invited for a contest and for whatever reason they couldn't come. And it was just easy so I don't start sending out invitations to you multiple times, because at my age, my memory isn't what it used to be, so I have to write everything down. So it's been a fun event to keep track of as we have worked our way through the contest season. With that, I have 2 suggestions for those of you that are still judging. The first suggestion is something I call and learned from my wife, the Elizabeth method. You all have a ballot in front of you. You're all familiar with this ballot. But Elizabeth and I were discussing the results of a contest. I've been fortunate to have Elizabeth join me in probably about half the contest that I have judged. By the way, if you get a chance, I was talking with Nancy and Mike. They do the same thing. They talk about the contest results afterwards. And it is a wonderful way to kind of discuss why you found someone should be the winner versus this one, what you saw in a speech or an evaluation. It really helps me, as we go through the contest season, improve my judging. But Elizabeth uses an interesting method that I had not used before. Essentially, she sits back, watches the speaker, doesn't really make notes, and then she gets a first impression. This feels like a good speech to me. A good speech. That's kind of the impression she'll have. And then what she'll do is she'll take the good category and go down category by category and say, well, was it really good at the high end of the range, or was it just a good speech? I started adopting that, and I found, in my opinion anyway, that I was getting more accurate results. Because very often, I used to put a letter grade down, and I still do. But it helps solidify what I'm thinking of that evaluator and that speaker, and kind of give me a range of where I thought this speaker was overall. Was it a good evaluation? Was it a very good evaluation? Was it fair with possibly good? So I call that the Elizabeth method. Feel free to adopt it if you like. I have really enjoyed it, and I'm happy to give credit to my wife. When you are the chief judge, I am also always counting the ballots. And I have to say, I think we have an outstanding judging corps. Even in the contest that I opened with, I thought that was not a bad result, because that particular contest had 6 very good evaluators. They were all good. They all had strengths in one area. They all had weaknesses in one area. and not one of them jumped out at me. So we have a very good, in my opinion, judging corps. However, there is one bias that I've noticed, and it has affected me, and I want to just offer it to you, and I call it the previous good speaker bias. There have been a couple or three contests that, in my opinion, didn't accurately reflect the results on that day. And they all shared this in common. The winner was someone who is known as a good speaker and a good evaluator, but they weren't really on that day. And yet what often happens, certainly in my case, and I've noticed in other judges too, if someone is a really good speaker, you kind of expect them to be good. You're kind of waiting for them to be good. And it's hard to say, you know, they've been better. They really weren't that good today. So I urge you, if you are a judge, just keep that possible bias in mind. It's really the only bias I can honestly say I've noticed, not only in myself, but in some of the other ballots. But some of you are contestants. And I'd be willing to bet you want some tips to win those contests. Tip number one, folks, let's get this energy level up. I can't tell you, when you have sat through dozens and dozens of contests, how you never want someone to come out again, ever, and say, Mike, that was a fine speech. I'm really happy with that. Look, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, you're like, God almighty, will someone do something different? So get that energy level up like you're excited to be in the contest. You really want to be there. That alone will probably win you most of your contests. Here's a second one, and I want to illustrate this with a story. John, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use you in this story. John was a model speaker in a contest, and he came up. There was a lectern there, and he didn't do anything except he just grabbed the lectern, put it to the side, came back up, smiled at everybody, and started his speech. Now, folks, you know what that says? I own this stage. I'm comfortable up here. While I'm up here, this is my stage, and I am going to own it. I encourage you to follow John's example. When you are up there, you control that stage. All eyes are on you. Feel comfortable. Own it like nobody else is better at that moment on that stage. And of course that requires a lot of confidence, but it's the confidence that will help you win contests. I'm going to go over time, but that's okay, I wouldn't win anyway. And my third tip, stand out in a good way. Now this is the humor speech contest. So of course we all see all sorts of things. Props that don't really fit, people dancing for no particular reason. What I mean is, if you recall, I stood at the corner of the stage and specifically asked her not to wait for me to come shake hands. And I started my speech right there and then worked my way forward. If I were in a contest, I might start in the back of the room and start speaking, especially if I was mic'd and everybody could hear me. The point I'm making is, if you get one speech after another, and you're a judge, and you're trying to judge 8 or 9 speeches, and they all start, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, good Lord, come on, give us a break here. Give us something different. Now remember that contest that I told you about? 6 judges, 6 contestants, everybody picked a different winner? If one of those contestants had done something a little bit unique, maybe start off at the side of the stage, maybe start off in the middle, because this one's designed in a room, and go right to the speaker and say, that was marvelous. Did you all see how this speaker took command of that stage when they grabbed that lectern and moved it off? See, you're reaching out into the audience and you're doing something no other contestant did. Now that alone might not be enough to win, but at least, for judges having to judge 5 to 8 contestants, they're going to remember you. And they're going to pay closer attention to the rest of what you have to say. My friends, it has been a joy being the chief judge for Division A. I encourage you all to do it, because I can guarantee you, unlike my friend Art, I have no intention of doing it again. As much as I've enjoyed it, So I can pretty much guarantee you there'll be an opening next year for this particular position, and that will allow you the opportunity to share the tips that you gleaned.